Hey, Donnie, how you doing?
Very well, Steve. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Obviously, Washington is a very physical team. How do you feel like you match up against that aspect of their team? And also with a guy like Wilson, who you've got a little history with, is there a danger at all of becoming overly focused on a guy like that?
Well, rightfully so. He's a unique player in the league. I think their team does present some challenges. They're a physical team. If you look at our matches this year, I think we handled that very well. Obviously, the Carlo injury aside, I think our team. I think all teams have to be prepared to play any style, any night. You don't pick your opponents. You just prepare for them as they come, and worry about your own game. And I think that's something that we've tried to do over the course of my time here is be the best that we can be, address some areas of need and fill some holes as we go along throughout the season, try to identify them, be really honest about them if you have some needs, and then go to war. I mean, that's honestly what it comes down to. You just got to have everybody in and ready to chip in.
Thank you.
Steve Fluto-Shinzawa.
Hi, John. Two questions on your defense. First, on Mike Reilly, your assessment on how he's impacted the game in all three zones so far.
Well, when we acquired Mike, we felt that he would bring the first pass D zone exits. You've seen us stretch a little bit more. He sees the ice. He's been involved in the offensive blue line. He hasn't chipped in any goals yet, but he's certainly gotten his shot through with regularity. Been active, as I said, taking pucks down the wall, making some plays to the net front, the slot areas. The mobility is something that we felt and identified that he could help us, as I said, from a D-zone exit standpoint, still trying to adjust a little bit to the system and the differences, the nuances associated between the two teams. Play with a bunch of different partners. Is probably settling in to play a little bit with Carlo and/or Miller. But he's fit in well for us and gives us the appropriate depth that will likely be required for the playoffs.
Okay. And then also on your two young Ds, Lozon and Zboril, injuries around them, injuries to them. Amid all that, how do you think they performed and developed this year?
Well, I think it's had some ups and downs associated with injuries. Lozy missed an extensive period of time, and it was a hand injury, so it come back, and he's got to smooth out a little of the rough edges. At times, the game is hard for him, but you can't deny his compete level. Led our team in penalty minutes, time on ice, and embraced either the matchup role or that hardness role that we covet in our players. Kevin Miller in the same light. So I think Lozy's continuing to move along in his career and getting the appropriate number of games it requires for all players, but in particular, I think on the back end, and continue to progress. So we're happy and excited where his trajectory continues. And Jakub, I mean, he's 40 some odd games into his career. I think he's also had some ups and downs, some challenges that I think we expected to have. He's played through some of those injuries as well. He'll be on the outside of our starting lineup, but as you well know, we've used 8, 9, 10 D in the course of the playoffs. He has to be prepared and ready. This is his first go around for that. I think he's acquitted himself well. I think he's had some bumps and some ups and downs, but I think his ability to move the puck and D zone exits while he learns to play against the best players in the National Hockey League is he's done fine.
Tara Sullivan.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask kind of the big picture question, how you feel about where the team is at, if you're a believer in momentum, or is it like turn the page, new start, and with the playoffs, and if you feel, I guess, quite honestly, if there's enough gas in the tank for a pretty deep run here.
Well, you start with game one. I think you're foolish to look beyond that. We've played an incredible amount of hockey over a short period of time. Knock on wood, we're relatively healthy to start, and you hope to remain that way. So I can't answer the gas in the tank, from the standpoint of what the attrition will be like as we go through game 1, 2, and beyond. We just prepare for game one. I think the guys are excited for the opportunity. It was hard. It was difficult to get in, and everybody knew how tough it was going to be to make the playoffs. It is every year, but in this year it was very unique with the challenges. It's pretty incredible that our players and our staff and everybody was as dedicated as they are and throughout the league to get to this place. But the excitement, I think is obvious for all of our players. It was even so when we brought in some additions, not just because they would be excited to be joining a team that was hopefully headed to the playoffs, but our incumbent players that have been there, they have done that, and they want to try and do it again.
Matthew Porter, go ahead.
Don, how do you feel about the center depth in the organization right now after this kind of uneven year with, its own particular challenges in evaluating Providence, and specifically Jack Studnicka's development in that?
Well, Matt, as far as where we are right now, I mean, we have Charlie Coyle playing on the wing, and we know he's from a depth standpoint in center. I think we're well equipped. We added Curtis Lazar at the deadline to deepen that pool as well. Frederick's playing on the wing. I think we're fine in terms of where we are right now today. I'm not worried about answering the question, not to defer, but I'll kick it down the road in terms of some decisions to make that we have to as we go forward with some of our UFA guys. And if we have to promote from within or re-sign or bring those players back, that's obviously what our intention generally has been, and promote from within and develop. But if we have to identify, then we'll continue to do that. Jack's development year has been up and down. Certainly got off to a good start, and starting with our club, has gone down to continue to work on his overall game. Has come back up and played in a couple games and put himself fine. I think there's work to be done. I think Jack knows that. He wants to be a better player. It's a great thing about our younger players, and Jack in this case in particular, as you asked. He's motivated to become a better hockey player, a more complete hockey player. And, he's got some physical maturity that he has to continue to go through, and he's committed to doing that.
Reminder to media, if you no longer have a question, you can go ahead and put your hand down. Alternatively, if you have a question, go ahead and get that hand up. We'll go next to Kevin Dupont.
Don, I've got a Swayman question and a Hall question, if I could. The Swayman question being, I know your posture on this question answer is usually you get the players, the coach makes the decision who he plays. Butch last night said he's going to have Swayman as the backup. Would I be correct that in this instance, this was more of say, an organizational discussion about, a young player, playoffs coming? Is it more strategy to this one, or is it the standard coach plays who he wants?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, the organizational philosophy is to have the discussions and put a blueprint in place. Bruce decides who plays that particular night, and we discuss moving forward. What's the best lineup that we can have as an organization to win, and ultimately that's generally where the decisions lie. I mean, you have different opinions, and that's really kind of what we're paid for: opinions and experience in this business. And but ultimately, he's the one that sends the guys over the boards, and he has full authority to decide. Bob Ascens is a big part of that. Mike Dunham's a part of that. Just where players are at, and our player development staff, who can handle what. But we just got to the place where Sway was playing really well, giving us a great opportunity to win each and every night, and we've generally rewarded the players that have done that. And I think that's something that our organization stands by. We're not trying to rush players. We're not trying to put players in situations where they can't handle. Last night's a great example of a player that, some players would have been intimidated in that situation, and Jeremy wasn't. So it's the next step. He's got a lot of them to still go through, but these are experiences that he'll benefit and our team benefits from. And obviously Yarrow continues to be a healthy option for us now that he's fully recovered.
A little more, if you will, vetting or scrutinizing because it's a small sample size, because it's the intensity of the playoffs, or no? Well,
it is a small sample size, but the wins, the losses, and the stops kind of add up. Obviously, you look at how your team has played in front of him, what the expected, percentages and high dangers and situations that he's handled. Teams that we've played against are somewhat common for this season. But we've put him on the road, we've put him in situations, and he's handled them well. So, for us, you're right. There's still a lot to be determined, and there's plenty of young goaltenders that have taken huge steps forwards and minor steps back, and then, we'll see. But again, what we've thrown at Jeremy up until this point, he's handled well, and we expect him to continue.
Okay, and on the Hall question, I'm just curious how it all came together. I mean, this is a player you were negotiating with back in the fall. He goes to Buffalo. I'm just curious how it sort of coalesces at the deadline? Does the agent reach out to you? Does Kevin Adams call you? Are you proactive and call him first? What's sort of the genesis of what brought him here?
Well, it doesn't start with the agent. It always starts between the general managers and having ongoing conversations throughout the year with each and every one of them. Really, and sometimes situations change. Teams pivot. There's certain teams that are tracking in one direction, injuries or such, throw it aside, and they track it different as you go down the deadline. We're no different in that regard. We're monitoring every day how our players are playing. Players that we had interest in, whether it's in the summer or over the course of the season, our scouts do a heck of a job of covering a lot of ground to identify players and watching. Obviously, Taylor was in our division. But it obviously starts between a conversation with Kevin and myself as to who may be available, what you're thinking to do and changing your team, as you do with all the general managers. When Taylor's name came up, we were one of the choices that we felt that he would choose and elect to choose, given his trade status and no trade status, and then it really went from there in terms of Taylor being in a unique situation. But Kevin doesn't have to move a player in that sense.
Right.
We just found common ground, and Kevin was really good to deal with. He knew that Taylor had preferences. He did what was best for the Buffalo Sabres, and we were trying to do best for the Boston Bruins.
And so in that instance, Kevin would have called you first, or were you aware of what the situation and you called Kevin?
Again, it's more organic than that, Kevin, to be honest with you. It's just over the course of the year, you're touching base with all 31 general managers. In this case now 32 with Ronnie coming in, or 31 because I'm one, but I'm not calling myself. Talk to myself quite a bit, but I don't listen. So in that sense, I couldn't tell you who made the first call. It's kind of irrelevant at this point in time because we stayed in touch throughout, and you're just keeping a pulse, and he's doing the exact same. He's doing his job.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tom.
Time for a couple more. We'll go next to Joe Haggerty. You got us, Joe?
Joe's talking to himself.
Well, we'll pause for a brief moment then to allow for more questions.
Hello.
All right, we got you, Hags. Go ahead.
Okay. Just hopping on Dupes' question a little bit there. When you're looking at players you're interested in at the trade deadline, how much of a weight in the scouting and the discussions that you have internally, how much of a weight is put on the kind of fit that they're going to be in the dressing room, the kind of due diligence you do to find out what kind of people they are and fit they're going to be there versus the exact needs of what they fill on the ice? What kind of weight system is there for you guys when you're discussing players?
Well, I would say you probably know me pretty well, Joe, that the locker room is really, really important to me, and tapping into every resource that we have. Obviously, our scouts do a great job. There's a lot of background stuff to go through. The context of one team a player played for could be far different from the next team that he played for, and how the usages are. The analytic department will scrape that, and really where he fits, meeting with the coaches, our own coaches, to have an understanding of where they're going to play that player and where the moving parts are and how it affects other players and the dominoes associated with that. Deep down, you have to know the player. Ultimately, you don't know until you're in your room, until he's played for your club and you have a knowledge of how he is in the locker room. Now, you may have an overlap sometime along the way. Players have crossed paths on other teams, and you have to tap into that. We use those resources within our own group to allow them to give us some insight as to what a person's like, how he's going to fit in, and is he going to be a teammate that they want to play with, and again, try and validate what you're seeing, what the scouts are seeing, what they're pushing for, and really, the pool is not that big in the sense of who's necessarily available and who you're going after. Sometimes those things align, sometimes they don't, and then you just have to make a decision and move forward. And in this case, we found 3 players in particular that I hopefully had checked off some boxes that we felt that we had some deficiencies or need, and then you go to work on integrating them and making them feel comfortable. And I know our players and our staff does a great job of making these guys feel comfortable, so they're thinking about hockey and not about really other things. And Curtis Lazar is a great example of that. He and his wife had just welcomed a baby boy to the world. So, really, again, trying to do what's best for the player and their families and getting them comfortable and checking all the boxes.